this dream, and there's these thousands of young people, and they have papers in their hands, and they're pushing against, it looks like a white, like horse corral fence. Just thousands and thousands and thousands of them, and they're cheering and yelling like they're in a football stadium. Yay! And telepathically, their voice is coming to me saying, we are going to push on every door that we possibly can, and we're going to go through every one that pops open. And I just, wow, I just sat up and I went, wow, what a powerful dream, because it really is kind of what's going on right now.
I think that is an excellent description of what is actually going on. That is exactly how I feel. I said in a Facebook post, it's like we're pushing on the walls of the castle and it's about to crumble, and it's great. It really is. And there is a wave of people that are awakened enough to do this, and they're going to awaken the next wave and the next wave and the next wave. And that's how we're going to shift into what everybody is calling, well, the shift.
I even have people call me and say, well, be careful of what you're posting and all of that. But we are kind of in this process of getting the word out at such a level. And as you said, it's happening on such a massive scale without anybody organizing it or putting it into plan. It is that 100th monkey energy where people are just catching this wave and saying, wow, can I do that? Okay, I'll go ahead and try it. And there's a lot happening right now. So do we want to just tell what we feel like this old slavery system is really? It looks like you were ready to say something. What were you going to say?
Yeah, I was going to say, 5 years ago, that did happen to me. I did put it out there on mainstream news, actually. It was on the news that, the United States has pulled a fraud on the American people. And they came after me for it, and I never got a court hearing or anything like that. I never was charged with a crime. I have no criminal record, but they sure as heck tried to do that. Now that's over. There is so many people pushing this, just like you said. How could they really go and catch all these thousands and thousands of people from all over the place hitting it all? They can't. They don't even have the manpower to do that.
True. What you and I are talking about is obvious to us because we are among like a pretty large number of people who've been studying for quite a while of what has occurred here in our system and why it feels like we're in a system where everybody's stretched economically, people don't have enough, paying taxes is extremely painful and seems inappropriate, but we can't quite figure out why. So what is it? What is this system that we're in? We talk about, our birth certificates, what happened at birth, how the collateral of what we are has been being traded on the stock market. And I have people write me and say, is it possible that this is true?
It's true.
This story of what seems so obvious to you and me, what is going on right now? Because we're kind of talking about it from the inside, but if somebody just shows up from the outside and listens to this video, what is going on? What are we kind of in the middle of cracking open?
Well, first off, in this country, when I say in this country, I say the geographic location of America, not the United States. That's a different area. We could get into a little bit of that. My last comment actually alluded to that. This was done, what they did was in 1930 when they orchestrated the collapse, because that was all orchestrated. That was to reorganize the country's debt that we've had since the Revolutionary War. So even that fact, let's just do a quick aside note, debt is forgiven every 7 years for individuals, but for countries, it's every 70 years. So if you do the math from the Revolutionary War, 70 years later was the Civil War, 70 years after that was the stock market crash, and 70 years after that was 9/11. So every time there's a reorganization of bankruptcy, they create this big thing to keep everybody's eye on it, why they reorganize the bankruptcy behind the scenes and you don't know it.
Wow.
Yeah, it's that simple. And you really can trace it. It's very easy to see now that we have computers and information at our fingertips. So, and please, anyone listening that doubts this, start researching records. Don't take my word for it. So what they did in 1933 to pay the bankers off was mortgaged off all of the souls of people. Okay, they mortgaged off your soul, your energy, and your land. Okay, so all the land and all the life energy from that point till forever in the future, was mortgaged. We were the surety to pay that mortgage. Okay. So when they talk about the public debt of 20 trillion, that is the debt to the bankers. So we have the Federal Reserve loans the United States money. The Federal Reserve is a private bank. It's no different than Bank of America or anything like that, other than it organizes those banks. But let's forget about that for a minute. It's just a private bank with owners from another country, happens to be England. So we really never got free from England, maybe for a split second, but that's about it. And these bankers that own this private bank named it the Federal Reserve System so that everyone would think that it was a federally regulated, mandated agency. It's not. It's just like if I went and I said, hey, I'm going to call this Rob's Federal Carpentry. And everybody would go, oh, that must be, you know, he must be with the federal government because it's federal.
Rob, you know what this feels like? You know, remember in The Wizard of Oz when Toto is barking and kind of pulls back the curtain behind the wizard who's running everything behind the scenes? Feels like we're in the middle of that, doesn't it?
That movie was written to tell you this, okay?
Oh, yeah.
They were trying to tell you in the movies, because if anyone comes out and says this in the public, especially at that point in time, they would get a bullet in the head, right? That's what Kennedy did. Kennedy said, we're done with the banks. We're going back on the gold standard. They blew his head off. Lincoln came out and said, we're done with the banks. We're going to the greenbacks. Under the Treasury, they blew his head off. You know, anyone that does this, that back then, especially in the political arena, that's what happened. That's how they kept control. So to bring this around to the accounts, so they reorganized this bankruptcy and they set up these accounts that are tied to your birth certificate. What it does is it extracts your value, your life energy, right? While you're busy working on the public side of the ledger to pay this debt that they say you owe, when really the United States is its own corporation and it owns that debt, we don't. Meanwhile, you have millions and millions and millions of dollars in this account in your name. And that's just one account. There's hundreds of these accounts all over the world. They're in your name. They're using your social security number. So people go, oh, well, how is that my money? Well, no one on earth has a right to use your name or your social security number without your authority. So they take this birth certificate bond, they trade it, they bundle it up, they call it stocks and bonds, and they trade off of it all over the world, and the money gets dumped into your account because that bond certificate is tied to your account. So when you die, they go, oh, look, he showed up. The guy came back to collect his money, but he's dead. So we're just going to take that because, well, he's dead and there's nothing he can do with it. And he's just going to gift it over to the state and probate. So we're going to go ahead and take those millions and hope you had a nice life. That's what they do. They keep the money when you're dead. That's why they can't wait to kill us, because they can then take those accounts and you're done. So we have chemtrails.
Rob, it's almost like you have to grow new brain cells or activate new brain cells to understand this, because we've been living in it's almost like a certain computer program, a certain software, a certain belief system, where our whole belief matrix is set up that the government is serving us and we're being taken care of.
Well, if I can comment just on, that's a very good point. It's not it's not that we can't understand it. We can't believe it. So it's acceptance more than understand. It's very simple to understand. I mean, it's cut and dry. But how could this happen without us knowing? That's conspiracy there. How could they do this? And here's how. They take your attention span, okay? They say our attention spans are like this, right? Well, these people that plan this, they plan out in 100, 200, 80-year increments. They're like, they're not worried about if their plan comes to fruition when they're alive. They just care about the bloodline after them, their family, that they're still in control when this plan ferments and comes to fruition. So yes, it is very hard. It's easy to understand, but very hard to accept because it's a whole different reality.
So how do we identify who this infamous they is?
Well, there's a lot of ties to that. I mean,
without turning this, I mean, that could be a whole, show unto itself.
Really twisty. For the immediate sense, the owners of the Federal Reserve are the Rothschilds, and they basically have trust behind, they're hidden behind so many trusts that you can't just look up and go, oh, they're the owners. Like you have to go from trust to trust to trust to trust to trust. And ultimately it goes back to the Rothschilds, the Vatican Bank. They're all in cahoots together. There are families that we'll never see that are worth trillions and trillions of dollars that do all the string pulling of the Vatican Bank and the Rothschilds and all that. They're the ones behind the scenes that are calling all the shots.
So don't they know that they can't take it with them?
Well, okay, so let's get to the really deep-seated families that you'll never see. They're doing this on a completely spiritual level. They're doing this to us to help us. And we think they're doing it to hurt us. But no, they're saying, no, this was the plan for thousands of years. And now the plan has come to the point to where we need to pull the strings and release it all. So at that level, they're aware of it. At the lower levels, there are very ego-based, arrogant people who, yes, they don't know they can't take it with them. And if they do, they don't care. They want it all while they're here. Those people do exist, but they're being pushed out by the string pullers because the string pullers are saying, okay, you guys did your job. Now it's over. Now the meek shall inherit the earth, right? That's what we're doing. That's the point that we're at. And they're giving what we're doing with this ACH and stuff and these accounts is the first wave of that, you know?
So let's talk a little bit about that, which is going on. And what I'll just say is I do end up calling this kind of an ancient slavery system, but it is something that we agreed to, so to speak, as an experiment in duality or as a fledgling civilization to grow. And really, I think we've reached a maturity. There's millions of people now around the world who I think many have even been born with advanced DNA, or switches are going on where the DNA is really accelerating. And maybe just these fields of light that we're going through that the ancients have talked about for thousands of years that are activating us to be more aware, more awake, more conscious, and more willing to participate in our own destiny, so to speak. And so it's time for us to kind of grow out of being children, which the birth certificate process sort of puts us in a perpetual state of.
Yes. And
to mature into saying, I'm willing to take responsibility for my own life, my own value. Yes. And I don't know if we want to go into what Heather did a few years ago. That might be a good thing to recap on. But
well, I think just what you said to help people understand why this is spiritual and why we don't need to headhunt and burn anybody at the stake. That's a very important point to elaborate on in itself. So, you know, for those people who kind of understand, and even those that don't, maybe this will open your eyes a little bit, but humanity as a creation is a very new, recent creation when you look at the age of the universe. So humanity was given this creation of limitation because apparently, allegedly, nowhere else in the universe can you experience limitation like you can on Earth. So and this is just from my own belief and my own knowing, you know, the plan was to create this humanity and let them be limited and take away their ability to remember how they got here. And then once they remember and they reconnect to source, the project is complete. They've done it. We've just done this amazing experiment in creation. So to keep us cut off to see if we could get back, they brought in gold and money. You know, hey, we've got to create this slave mechanism to make their pineal gland pop, to make their DNA activate,
or call it a value system that kind of says it's more valuable than our value.
Than us, right.
And we have to remember our own value.
Yes, and that's what we're doing. So we have successfully completed this, which is why it's so beautiful, you know. So these people that did this to us are us. They're just, you know, playing in this lifetime, they're playing the role opposite us, but in other lifetimes, maybe we played their role and they were us, you know? So that's why we really shouldn't get angry with anyone. We should just expose the truth and say, we're done and we know what our value is and we're going to take our value and we're going to create a world that doesn't have pollution, doesn't have sickness, doesn't have hate, doesn't see boundaries, doesn't see limitation of borders. That's what we're doing. You know, so we need to thank them, actually.
And, yes, and where every person has enough food, shelter, the basics of life, water, education. Why don't we do just a really quick review of what Heather did in the UCC filings and the One People's Movement? I mean, just like do you want to do a 2-minute overview of that, or shall I?
Yeah, I'm really not super in depth, or I can't. I shouldn't say I can't, but I probably won't give a super in-depth explanation of that, only because at that time I was pushing with another group against the Vatican, and the OPPT was doing the commercial. See, everything they did was in commercial law.
And so what we're talking about here is there have been a number of movements that have taken place, and you were part of one. They were part of another. But to begin breaking down this formal marine law, basically, that we've been living under, and to set humanity free, to say, and I'm probably not going to speak it as well as you do, so let you do a quick just overview.
Yeah. So everything is commerce. The entire world is locked into commercial activity. There is no private as much as everybody thinks there is. And if it is private, no government on earth can interfere with that. That's why they make everything public, and that's why they turn it into commerce, because in commerce is fiction. So only fictions can play with fictions, and you can kill a fiction with no conscience because it's fiction. So even if you are real, but you are assumed and agree to be a fiction, we can kill you and it doesn't bother us karmically because you agreed to be a fiction. So that's really where they get off on that. So Heather Tucci, along with some other high-powered, I believe they were ex-attorneys, I could be wrong, and again, don't quote me on a lot of this stuff, but they got together because they had spent time in these high banking ranks, okay? They were attorneys, and they understood this commercial law around the world and how the commercial language is spoken and what it actually means. And that there are trusts all over the world that are broken down to keep people in that are for humanity's sake. So in order to collapse a lot of those commercial boundaries and stuff, they had to do certain maneuvers with the Uniform Commercial Code, it's called, to lock the US and other entities in to basically almost like a foreclosure. They had to foreclose on that system so that it would implode and allow all of the trusts that are locked into it to poof, explode out into the world, and everybody has access. Okay, so that that's a short brief of what was done, and that's what they did back in 2012.
That's good.
Yeah, so we're starting to see the physical reality, or if we want to call it that, of the manifestation of that work now coming to fruition, And at the same time, there were other groups, like you said, pushing on the Vatican and doing other things. And we all had our roles that played in together. And here we are at the...
And again, this wasn't really orchestrated in any way more than just in consciousness. There was a wave of waking up happening, and different groups were doing different things as it became apparent that that's what needed to be done in order to start expressing personal freedom outside of this corporate system.
Yes.
Okay, so yeah, go ahead. I know you have some really interesting things that occurred, Rob, recently, and I think that's what we want to jump into. That's what we're all abuzz about here. So go ahead and give us a little background. Oh my God, this is amazing.
It's been incredible. So on June 28th, which was not this past Thursday, but Thursday before, I got some information from a friend of mine on Facebook that I've never even met personally. We've just been kind of going back and forth. He's a really nice guy. He says, hey, I just paid all my bills using my Social Security number. He goes, but I didn't really know if I should tell you or not, because everything I do, you always kind of find flaws in it, because he doesn't know as much about law, and I want him to be safe and not do anything that's going to get him in trouble. So I said, no, I said, give me the information. So he said, if you put your Social Security number without dashes and your name as the account name on electronic e-checks to pay your bills, you can pay your bills, your car payment and stuff like that. And he's right. Oh, and I'm sorry, and the routing number for the Federal Reserve Bank. And he was right, and I knew that because we used to do that in paper form years ago. It's called accepted for value. Okay?
And the reason that works is because each of us has a bank account based on our Social Security number, based on our birth certificate. In fact, the account number is our Social Security number.
Yes, without dashes. So the private one has millions and millions, sometimes billions of dollars in it. and that's without dashes. And it's, if you look on the back of your Social Security card, there's a letter and a series of numbers. Forget the numbers. The letter signifies which Federal Reserve, there's 12 of them, which Federal Reserve your account ties to. You can go on the Federal Reserve website and look up the routing numbers for each Federal Reserve. So what you do is, that is your account and routing number to the bank. So again, what you're doing is you're accessing that account that is yours. So this started for me on June 28th. I let the word out to a few friends. By Monday, and I'm not saying I'm the one that started it, I think other people on that same day got the same information, and it just spread like wildfire. By Monday, everybody was discharging their debt, their cars, their bills.
The figure that I heard was within a week, 100,000 people, 100,000 transactions had taken place of people accessing their accounts and making payments on things.
Yep. Yep. Now, these payments that I've experienced have been reversed, okay? So a lot of people are getting disheartened. Oh, well, it worked, but they reversed everything and I still have to make the payments. So what I'm trying to encourage people with is, it's not about that the payment didn't stick. It's about the fact that if a transaction goes through, even if it's only for a day, if it goes through and it's accepted, that means that that account. Sorry about that. Somebody called in and it cut me off.
That's okay. You're back. No worries.
So the point is that account exists in your name with your Social Security number. So I keep encouraging people, when you make a transaction, take a screenshot of the receipt that it's been paid. Sometimes it even says Federal Reserve Bank on it with your ending number. I mean, that is proof that this account exists in your name with your Social Security number. And the key to that is, no one on earth has the authority to open an account in your name without your consent and use it to put millions and millions of dollars in and trade on that Social Security number. No one. So that's fraud. Okay, and it's fraud on the largest level that humanity has probably ever seen, by our own Federal Reserve.
And so what we would like to see, or what has been discussed in the numbers of people that are already doing this, is if everyone who puts this to the test will take screenshots and keep a little file, you basically have proof that your account exists. And ultimately, there are people literally working on this behind the scenes to help move it into more viability. And we're not really free to talk about that at the moment, but it's and people have said to me, well, is this safe? Well, will something happen to me if I try this? So Rob, do you want to address that?
Yeah, absolutely. There's always that fear of, oh my gosh, I'm doing something wrong. Well, in my opinion, I welcome them if someone's going to come say I'm doing something wrong, because I'll stand on my own 2 feet and say, oh, really? How is there an account in my name with my Social Security number with millions of dollars in it that I've never seen, never heard of, never been told about, but yet transactions are occurring on it every day in the millions? How does that work? Please show me that law. They can't, because one doesn't exist. So, yeah, okay, maybe somebody will knock on your door, but with 100,000 transactions happening practically in a weekend, I seriously doubt they have enough manpower to knock on everybody's door. So what we're doing is we're collectively exposing this fraud to the point to where they're going to have to release those accounts back to us, because they're going to have to say, yes, you own it, because we do. It's my account. They can't tell me I can't use that account. That's my account. Sorry you put money into my account. That's not my problem. That's your problem. However, you did it fraudulently, so you can't claim the money back because it's mine. It's fraud. So that's the beauty of it. And for people who are afraid and worried about getting in trouble and not willing to stand on their own, maybe it's not for them. But I say to you, you got to stand for something or you'll fall for everything. So,
So pretty much, really, if someone did want to try this, finding out the routing number, and there are videos online with various people talking about this, showing where the routing numbers are, or actually showing some of the routing numbers, and then using an electronic payment system say you have a credit card, there's an electronic payment system in your back end of that facility, and you simply put a bank deposit or bank withdrawal, whatever it is, bank transfer, which is rather than paying with a check, and you put the routing number and your social security number. And for many people who are trying this, it is popping up showing that is the Federal Reserve Bank, and it would be your account with the Federal Reserve Bank. And then, so that is being discharged in many situations. And I think some have gone through and not been returned.
Yeah, a lot have gone through without reversals. So, you know, I say to everybody, call to action, start going out and paying your bills. Worst that can happen is it's reversed. Okay, yes, we can think about the boogeyman coming and knocking on our door, but personally, I'm not afraid of that. And I know all the people that I've spoken to doing this, they're not afraid either. They can't come around and arrest everybody. That's impossible. And they can't arrest you anyway if you make the very simple point and stand on the fact that this is my account. No one can administrate this but me. It's my name. It's my social security number. Please provide proof of where I signed a contract to give you the authority to open that. Can you please provide the contract? No, they can't. End of story. Case closed.
And then again, doing screenshots, which literally show, what you've entered and how that's shown up as the Federal Reserve Bank,
Exactly.
et cetera.
Some of these transactions for electric bills and stuff, I mean, come on. $150, $200 here, $1,000, $2,000. Really, there are millions of dollars in my account, millions of dollars. So don't come to me and try to say that I did something illegal when you guys are the ones completely pulling a fraudulent transaction here. I mean, there is no two ways about it. It doesn't take a law degree to see that,
And so people have asked questions about other countries, and apparently all birth certificates around the world are run through the Federal Reserve. So there are certain ways to apply those numbers to have them work in the system, and people are kind of in the middle of cracking that code right now. So
yeah, we're figuring out how that all ties together. Obviously, these other countries have central banks. Basically, any country with a central bank that's not the country's treasury, so to speak. I mean, if we want to kind of put it in short terms, their birth certificates are tied to that, but ultimately they all funnel back through the stock exchange and the DTC, which is the Depository Trust and Clearing Corporation in New York, and Washington, or the Federal Reserve. They all come back to the source, and that's the source. So yeah, and they did that because, well, the Vatican Bank has a lot to do with it, and they created Rome on the Potomac. That's why they call it Rome on the Potomac, because DC is just Rome all over again.
I've never heard that. Wow, that's great.
Yeah.
And really this kind of system goes back to Babylon. I mean, it's been going on for thousands of years as far as humanity trying to manage the rest of humanity. So Rob, we've just got a couple more minutes here to kind of bring this particular discussion to closure, and I'm sure we'll have more. Again, I think let's address the idea, I think people are probably the biggest fear people have is to stand up to this system because it's so big, and people go to prison for income tax evasion, and there's all these things that happen. And what we're really working on right now, and there's many other areas this is happening in, the RV, the potential for basic income for everyone. There's many ways that we're really, as a global community, working on moving past people having to live in poverty, kind of transferring this value that has been siphoned off and held by a few to run these mega corporations, to restore this to humanity and to restore our individual lives to be more free-flowing, to be more filled with creativity. And this is probably a notch in that, in that bucket, or in that crack that's being made in the matrix or in this old system. What's your feeling about how we're taking steps forward, where we're at right now, where we have to get to?
Well, that's a good question, because a lot of people say, well, if you get all this money and you don't have to work, who's going to do the work? Who's going to keep the grounds up? Who's going to keep the electric lines and all, who's going to do all this maintenance? So we have to get over the belief that we're going to get all this money and nobody's going to want to do anything. Well, that may be true for a certain period of time, but eventually people are going to go, well, this kind of sucks because things are not getting done, right? So nobody's going to do that forever. And a lot of us, like myself, I'm a worker by nature. I can't wake up and lay around the house all day and go on vacations. I can't do that. I've got to be productive. So what we're moving towards is an equal playing field for all human beings. There's no more capitalism. There's no more man at the top. If you look at these corporations right now, they're eating each other alive because they're broke, and they're going broke, but they're not telling us in the mainstream. So they're going to fall because capitalism is over. So we need to, this is our leap into creating a value that is within ourselves that works as a collective, you know? So everything on earth that we need done in terms of labor can be automated. So that leaves us to create and use our minds to design, to build, to do, you know, there's going to be people needed to do labor too. That'll always be, you know, but some of these people who are stuck in a labor job are because they didn't have the opportunity or the right opportunity to be educated in something they would love to do because they don't have the money, or they don't come from an affluent household that had the money to put them through the schooling. So that's going to be over. We're going to have education for everything needed for everyone, you know, because a guy that's a tradesman who people think has no brain is probably one of the most educated because he uses common sense. He can put 2 and 2 together. I've seen people come out of college with degrees and master degrees, and you give them 1 + 1 and they're like 3. The book says 3. I don't know. The book says 2. You know, and they can't figure it out. And it's like, because you're not applying the common sense side. So we have this, and this is where we're moving into, is that people will be taught these things. You know, they will be able to do what they want, but we've got to get over the money thing. We've got to get out that money gives us some sort of prestige and value, and you know, so that's where we're going. That's where all this is.
You know, I know this conversation can happen on many levels, because I'll even ask people, you know, when I'm just out in public, I said to a lady the other day, pretty soon we'll move beyond this old monetary system. And she said, oh, that'd be terrible. Then we'd be bartering with rocks, and those are heavy, you know, and well, it's going to be beyond the barter system. There's so much for us to learn in how do we live beyond a matrix where all we do is go to work every day. We don't get to really enjoy life until we retire. We're paying taxes. We're kind of stretched to the limit. We're paying mortgages and interest. And I know there's a lot of people who are very comfortable in traditional society who might disagree with you and I. And so this is a pretty big conversation. It's not going to get answered in, 30 minutes here, 40 minutes. And it's an ongoing conversation. However, some of these inequities that have existed for a long time with a corporate structure running the world, it's just beginning to really break through to mainstream humanity, and people are beginning to see that this has been going on. And it is time for us to create positive changes for ourselves, something that can give us a reason to get up in the morning and be excited and feel like we are entering as creative beings into the development of a better world where the needs of all are served. And so I think this is part of that direction.
Yeah, absolutely. And I always go back to this. If there's a problem, there is someone with a solution, right? So I may not have the answers to how all that works, but I guarantee you there are very intelligent people out there that have this way thought out, and that's their mission. That's their life purpose. That's their passion. Mine is this or that. Yours is this or that. Theirs is this. So everybody collectively, yeah, we can figure this out. Because people say, oh, well, how do you do this and how do you do that? But I'm not the guy with all the answers. I just know where I'm headed, and that there are millions of people that are heading in that same direction. They may be headed in that direction with their own little twist to it and their own gifts, using their own gifts, but we're all going in the same direction. So just sit back and enjoy and love your life, and one day at a time. It's all good.
That's true. I think from a 21st century superhuman standpoint, I say breathe and smile. Listen to your own heart. Let your heart lead you. Know that if you're doing things every day that you're not that happy with, that we are opening up the doors to human freedom and finding the ways that we can do things that we love, that bring us joy, that help us help each other to be better people and have a better world and be living for positive things for humanity. I think this old system is being broken down brick by brick, piece by piece, stone by stone, so that suffering can end and people can live in joy and creativity.
Absolutely. And if I could just say one more thing on that before we go, if there is something in your life that you're unhappy with, there's only one being in this entire universe that can change that, and it's you. It's no external force. It's not your environment. It's you, because everything is here. So if you are unhappy, look at what makes you unhappy, and people go, well, I can't do this and I can't do that because of this and my job and my family. I said those same things about 8 years ago, but somehow I made it happen because I just gave up on saying I can't. But I also said, I don't know how either, but I'm okay with not knowing how. I just know I'm not going to say I can't. How's it going to happen? I don't know, but it's going to. Right? It's like my girlfriend now, we're talking about buying a house and all, and she's like, well, how are we going to get this house? I don't know, but we're going to. And she's like, you just like automatically know. I'm like, yes, I do. Because I'm not going to accept anything else. I don't know how, but we're going to.
That's awesome, Rob. Great words of wisdom. If people want to learn more about what we were just talking about, the ACH payments, there's many videos out on YouTube right now, many postings going on Facebook. If people just do a public search, rather than us being specific educators in that, we're just trying to pass on the word. So
yeah, chime in on that. I just started a YouTube channel. It's Robert Michael. You can look up Robert Michael ACH commentary and you'll see one. I've only have like 3 videos, but I'm going to be doing a lot more that explains a lot of the background of how we got to this point. Just things that you and I were talking about, just elaborate on them more. So you can find me on YouTube as well.
Perfect. And there's other people doing similar as well. So there's a lot of information that's starting to be out there. This is really in the public eye right now, and it is a big wave that's happening.
Yep. Awesome stuff.
Thanks so much, Rob. We'll do more of these videos. And I want to tell everybody, follow your dreams, listen to your heart, breathe and smile, and be part of the change on planet Earth to help build a new world for humanity that serves the well-being of all.
Yes.
Ciao. Adios.